Less than a minute to go to the start of the Surfers International Resort 300 at Surfers Paradise International Raceway. The track dry at the moment, but rain still threatening. On pole position, Dick Johnson in the Ford Falcon with an incredible time in practice of 1 minute 15.3 seconds, 1.7 seconds under his lap record. Peter Brock second, 1:15.7. Alan Moffat completes the front row, 1:16.6. On the fourth row of the grid is the leader of the Australian Endurance Championship, Peter Williamson in the Toyota Celica 77. On the second row of the grid, Terry Shield, Mazda, from Alan Grice, BMW. 10 seconds to go. Good start from Brock, but Johnson challenging on the inside. Brock's out of the marbles. And Brock's got it. Alan Moffat in third position. This is what Peter Brock wants, to lead Dick Johnson. He's not had any chance to do that this year. Look at Johnson challenge. Far faster motor car in a straight line. The track's surface, very abrasive, washed very clean by this rain, and tyres will be a critical factor. Over 95 laps. They can't afford to go too fast, too quickly. Look at Brock fling that car through. Watch the rear wheel lifting. John Goss in fourth position in the Jaguar XJS. Onto the main straight, Peter Brock, Dick Johnson. Alan Moffat behind, losing the draft down the slipstream, but surprisingly not that far behind. He's in fourth place, goes John Goss, Terry Shield, Alan Brown. And a car off down the end of the main straight. It's Peter Brock who has to do well in the first 15 laps. There's the wreck. It's Alan Brown's car, and I believe Alan Grice is in that as well. That's underneath the Dunlop Bridge. Driver out of the car. There's the leaders, Peter Brock, coming through the S's. The end of the second lap. Behind him, Dick Johnson challenging. And Alan Moffat, as you can see, starting to drop brake a little bit. And this time, as they come up to the yellow flags, Johnson takes the opportunity to close whatever gap there was. Oh, oil down there. Watch the way Dick Johnson went sideways. So oil obviously spilled. That involved the Recar Commodore and Alan Grice's BMW, the Grice BMW going again. Oh, John Goss off now. That's on that oil underneath the Dunlop Bridge, and it certainly is having its effect on the field. Goss was in fourth position and is dropping right back. Only 4 laps into the race, and the oil is now joined by rain starting to fall on the circuit, so it'll be very interesting to watch the next few laps. Peter Brock knew that he had to do well in the opening laps if he was to be any chance against the much faster Dick Johnson Ford Falcon. We spoke to him before the event.
I don't want to be involved in any dicing, particularly with a car which would be potentially slower, so that means if someone's in front holding me up a little bit, I'll probably try to get through. I think it's important to get into a rhythm here pretty quickly, though, and if that means settling down a bit down behind, say, Dick Johnson, and just keeping him in sight, that's what I'll do. If On the other hand, if I feel as if I should be going a little bit faster, or could go a bit faster and perhaps push him a bit, I'll do that.
And Peter Brock, a very surprised man after that interview, I think, to be actually leading this event rather than dogging Dick Johnson. And if anything, Brock is opening a small lead in these conditions as we see the windscreen wipers on Peter Brock's car working, indicating that at the back of the circuit there certainly is some rain falling right now. And in the pits, John Goss with the Jaguar with Bob Vincent. The Jaguar of John Goss has had one off already. Not a successful day for Johnny Goss. He's running big Goodyear slick tyres. He doesn't like the way... Oh, sorry, he's on Dunlops by the looks of it. In fact, he started on the intermediate Dunlops, which indicates that he thought that the rain was going to be coming down. And it was the oil that took John Goss off. So, again, after a year of trying to develop this big Jaguar, John Goss turns this race as well into a development exercise rather than a race for the lead. And the leader, Peter Brock, on dry weather tyres, feeling out the track. In second place, Dick Johnson, under Qantas Hill. There's the gap between Peter Brock and Dick Johnson now, open to about 2.5 seconds down the main straight as the rain starts to get heavier, which means that shortly these drivers must start considering getting off the dry weather tyres on which they started the race and getting on to intermediates or even wet weather tyres. Certainly the rain not hard enough as yet to warrant wet weather tyres, which would be cut to pieces by the abrasive Surfers Paradise track, that the intermediates may be the only compromise that they can achieve. Dick Johnson, before the race, was incredibly confident about the outcome.
The whole format of racing has changed in the past 12 months, with whether it be a short race or a long race. And the cars have become so reliable that we're able to drive them flat out the whole time if we're physically fit enough to do so. And that's the way that I approach every race, and especially this one.
Well inside the lap record, almost 2 seconds inside your old lap record. Is the car capable of maintaining that sort of speed or just over that sort of speed for the whole 2 hours?
Well, when you get a car that can do a quick lap like that, it's obvious that you're not working a car hard if you knock it off another second lap or something like that. So we'll be basically using that as a bit of a buffer, if we can, to enable us to run quick lap times during the whole race.
Dick Johnson down the main straight, pursuing Peter Brock. Lap times tumbling, however, in these wet conditions. They started the race with 1:18.7. They're now well and truly into the 20s, 20 seconds, 1 minute 20 second barriers, and there's 2.5 seconds between Brock and Dick Johnson. Leading the Australian Endurance Championship on 27 points and leading his 2-litre class in this event, Peter Williamson in car 77, the Toyota Celica, is right where he wishes he wasn't at this moment. He's right behind Gary Whittaker in a Tirana, and Whittaker won't get out of the way through the S's, where Williamson is obviously faster, and down the straight, of course, it's Whittaker who's quicker, and Williamson is locked into a battle with a car that's going nowhere in the outright class, and he just wishes it'd go away. Loses speed down the straight. Williamson and another Toyota Celica driver, Graham Bailey, have won their 2-litre class in all 3 rounds of the Australian Endurance Championship to date. They therefore lead the Australian Endurance Championship on 27 points from a Mitsubishi Lancer on 24, then Holden, Mazda and Ford each on 18 points. To win the Australian Endurance Championship, Williamson would like to win today's race. It's not absolutely essential, but to win the 2-litre class today would clinch the championship. The first time ever a Toyota has won the Australian Endurance Championship. It's been dominated by General Motors, which has won it 7 times, and Ford, which has won it 3. Williamson knows the pressures that are on him, as he told us before the race started.
They run for 295 trade of Euless throughout Australia, and I've got a certain amount of respect for them. I've got to try and come first as well, and also we've got to win the championship, and it's a fairly tall order actually. It's 3 points, you know, it's a long way around here. Our cars are a bit heavier. The Lancers are very good in their class. The Mitsubishi Lancer is a very good 1600cc car, and we've got a few sort of people who are hassling us in our class, so, you know, it's not going to be easy.
With the rain falling down, Graham Bailey has already spun his Toyota Celica and has had a great deal of difficulty in getting back onto the circuit from the rain-soaked infield, which is very muddy. Peter Williamson, therefore, has the responsibility of the championship on his own shoulders. The rain starts to fall more heavily, still not hard enough to warrant coming in for intermediate tyres. Alan Moffat is in third position. He's 20 seconds behind Peter Brock, who has a short lead to Dick Johnson. Alan Moffat was hoping if it was going to rain, that it would rain very heavily. He's got some good intermediate wet weather tyres, hand grooved, which he used to get right amongst the pole position setters in the recent James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst. He knows that the Mazda is very good in very wet weather conditions, and that's what he's hoping for, that this weather will start to get worse than it is at the moment. The Mazda RX-7, of course, is a small engine, rotary engine motor car. However, with the peripheral porting that it's allowed to run, which Moffat incidentally has fought for with the Confederation of Australian Motorsport for 2 years, it's rated out to 4,584 cc's. That's only 500 cc's less than the capacity of Peter Brock's V8 Holden Commodore. So Moffat, while he's driving a small car, is in fact in the big car class and is rated along with them. Moffat evaluated his car's capabilities and the others before the race.
The qualifying times are good, and I think if I can maintain that pace in the race, it should be interesting. We certainly know we got the reliability to go, and I think it's a track where the little RX-7 will respond, and I think I can push the others along.
The problem of tyre wear and fuel, how does that affect you?
We've got good consumption miles per gallon by any standards, and Surfers has always been hard on tires. It's still a question of nursing the car a little bit to get just that added distance if you're trying to go a little farther than the others.
And Alan Moffat showing that he has another problem as well, that of a very, very croaky voice. In fact, he came down with the flu very badly after going to America to attend the Las Vegas Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago. He spent a week in bed, in fact, and is on antibiotics today. I saw him in the pits before the race. He is not very well at all, and I think that the endurance that is demanded by this event will really tell on Alan Moffat today.
But John, you must be perfectly happy with the way Peter's going at the moment.
Yeah, well, it couldn't be any better for us leading, and actually he's established a gap now of about 6 or 7 seconds. We're quite happy with that. The decision relating to the tyres is entirely up to Peter. He'll stay out there as long as he's happy. Fuel-wise, we've got a range of about 250k, so as long as Peter can handle and maintain the lead, he'll just stay out there and probably till about half distance or maybe a little longer.
Can you give us some indication on just how much rain has to be on the track before you consider changing to wet tyres?
Oh, it'd have to be nearly torrential to go to actual wet tyres. We'd probably change to intermediate tyres because you must remember that you get a shower, then it dries out, and then you have to come back and change the tyres. So we'd probably put it onto intermediates, but really at the moment there's not enough rain around to even warrant considering going to either intermediates or wet tyres. We'll just stay on the dries.
And the rain claims its first victim. That's the Mazda RX-7 of Peter McLeod. It's gone over, rolled end for end under the Dunlop Bridge. McLeod is being treated by ambulancemen. It's taken officials some 5 minutes to crowbar him out of the motor car. Just look at that wreck. He would have gone over at 130 miles an hour. Moving it back to a safer position so that the other drivers, should they come unstuck in that very treacherous corner, will not also hit the wreckage. 45 minutes into the race, and Peter Williamson has rolled now. Out of the Dunlop Bridge, going down, Peter straight towards Rothman's corner. The Celica has gone over and over. That's it lying there. Peter Williamson is out of the car and over the safety fence, but that now throws the Australian Endurance Championship into doubt. It comes back to Graham Bailey now in the other Celica, who now inherits the class lead, to see if he can take the Endurance Championship. But what bad luck for Peter Williamson. Rolled that car over and over. Peter Brock, 34 laps down, some 60 laps remaining in this race, and he's signalling to his pit that there is a problem. Look at that rear wheel lifting. Although the track is still wet, Brock is flinging this motor car around. Meantime, in the pits, they are setting up with a front right or front left-hand tyre, which may be Brock's problem. Certainly this time Brock isn't going for the pits, he's going through again, but he's been signalling furiously to his pit crew. He's telling them there's something wrong at the back of the motor car. There's a slick tyre waiting in the pits right now. We've got the two left-hand side tyres out, ready to put on the motor car. Brock is only 6 seconds in front of Dick Johnson, and Johnson now is keeping the pressure on Peter Brock, exactly the opposite to what we expected in this race. There's Brock through the kink in the back straight, fourth gear. There's Johnson right behind him and closing, so Brock probably does have a tyre problem. Flashing his lights at slower competitors in front of him, warning him to get out of the way. Brock desperate to win this race. It's very important to him that he shows Dick Johnson that he can beat Dick Johnson on his home ground, and he's putting up a magnificent effort. Look at both inside wheels there lifting. Only 35 laps down, the circuit abrasive, but one wouldn't expect him to be taking a tyre change yet, even in the wet, even in the dry. So in the wet, it's very unusual. Something else must have gone wrong with the car. No signal this time. Yes, there is a signal from Brock that time. But not so desperate. Maybe he's decided that he's going to have to live with it, because he can see Johnson now starting to dog him, and the gap is closing. Car 17, Dick Johnson, the man from Prudential, sponsored by the Queensland Ford dealers. And the most successful man in Australian motor racing this year. He's won the Australian Touring Car Championship, taken it away from Peter Brock. Won the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst, took it away from Peter Brock. Brock doesn't want Johnson to win this one. Smooth Dick Johnson, turns beautifully into the corner, into the S's. See the dry patch through the S's there. A lot of residual water hanging around, but there is one dry line through the S's, and it's that which very smoothly Dick Johnson is clinging to. Third position in the race, Alan Moffat has taken his pit stop, only 40 laps down, if that. He's been in the pits about 35 seconds. He took a left rear tyre and slams back out onto the circuit, losing third position to Terry Shield in another Mazda RX-7. Alan Moffat has taken the first significant pit stop of the race. And I just wonder why Moffat took that pit stop. It's very, very unusual at this time. This is the motor car that you would expect to be the lightest on tyres of the leading competitors, and in fact it's he who's taken the first pit stop. So between Peter Brock going off, Alan Moffat taking what must be termed an unscheduled pit stop, the race is one of drama and mystery at this stage, and a lot depends on Bob Vincent in the pits to tell us as the race progresses what occurred.
Well, we've had just over 2 minutes of running in this race, and it's a past the halfway mark, so any time now we should see the leading contenders come in and pit for that vital fuel stop. That's Peter Brock and Dick Johnson. Already seen Alan Moffat come in a very, very fast pit stop. He's back out on the track on a new set of tyres. With me at the moment, though, a man who had a very, very nasty smash indeed, Peter Williamson, who was the Toyota chances of taking the championship this year. Peter, first of all, are you okay?
A bit stiff, that's about all.
Physically, you're all right, though?
Yeah, had a medical check and I just got, sore muscles and things like that.
Right, now, what happened? You seem to be going a little bit harder those last 2 laps just before you crashed.
Well, I'm a racer. And Graham Bailey in the other Celica was challenging me, and I might have got a bit too overexcited and sideways up in the corner off the straight and out in the grass, where there'd been a lot of major accidents today, and I just couldn't stop it, and I hit the bank very, very heavily. I think the car's totally written off.
A quick question, Peter. I noticed you talked to one of the officials here on the track. Is there any problems with the track at that point?
Yes, the speeds are so high. We're passing under the bridge here in a right-hand corner at over 130 miles an hour. And you don't need much to get sideways. You get out in the grass, and to the left of the track, large grassy verge, and it's very wet and lined by a wall of tyres and an Armco fence, and you get out in the grass, you seem to go past. But I went sort of sideways down there for several hundred yards and had a very, very heavy accident against the fence. But what I said to the official was, I think it's about time, I think, that we had a look at it, and maybe a sand trap like they use in a lot of other circumstances like this, where they have a layer of sand on the ground, and the car can sort of spin itself to a standstill in the sand rather than in the grass.
Right, thanks very much, Peter. Now, standing by the pits for the pitting of Brock and Johnson. That will be a very, very vital pit stop for both crews.
It's 11.5 seconds behind Dick Johnson at this time. We have just passed the halfway point. In fact, the pace of the race is so great that they passed the halfway point in just less than an hour's racing. That's quite incredible when you consider there's only one dry line on this track, and off it, there's only disaster waiting for you. Peter Brock, we think, has already experienced a small taste of that disaster when he lost first place and dropped back to second behind Dick Johnson. And now the pit stops will be critical. Brock's been trying to carve back the 11.5 second advantage that Dick Johnson has got. It varies by about half a second a lap, but Johnson seems to have Brock's measure, as well he should on his home circuit. And Brock, as you can see, bouncing the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore off all the curbs. That's uncharacteristic Brock. But if he is bouncing him, you can be sure that that's the fast way round, because Peter Brock's not a man to drive any way but the fast way around a circuit. Again, signals to his pit crew. He's been doing that lap after lap after lap. It's unusual for Brocky to show that sort of anxiety. It's been happening more and more lately this year with the pressure that Dick Johnson has placed upon him. We've seen a new Peter Brock this year, in fact, a man who hasn't been Peter Perfect, Peter Cool, all the nicknames he's been given over the last 3 years when he was dominant in the Australian touring car scene. And there's the leader, True Blue Dick Johnson, car number 17, in front of a hometown crowd. They cheered him when he came onto the circuit today, dancing girls, all sorts of balloons going up. And the crowd that's here today in these wet conditions, and it's almost a record crowd for Surfers Paradise International Raceway, are all here for one thing, one man, Dick Johnson, in the Prudential Ford Falcon. 59 laps down and leading the under 2 litre class, the Chickadee Chicken Toyota Celica, keeping Toyota in points contention for the Australian Endurance Championships, because if Graham Bailey wins this class, he will get 9 points and thus take Toyota to their first victory in the Australian Endurance Championships. Bailey, in fact, has been the mainstay of the Toyota team in the Endurance Championships. He won the first 2 rounds and Adelaide International Raceway and again at Oran Park when mechanical troubles afflicted Peter Williamson. Then Bailey's car failed at Sandown in the Hang 10 400, and Williamson limped to victory there with his car running on about 2 cylinders in the last few laps. But Graham Bailey has been a real thorn in Peter Williamson's side this year. A team member certainly, a teammate certainly in terms of class of motor car, but Graham Bailey has proved to be as fast as Peter Williamson. And that's got Willow worried, as we see today, of course, with Willow's prang, because Graham Bailey was forcing him hard. An unusual circumstance when you would have thought that both drivers would have been going for race victory rather than necessarily racing each other. As Peter Williamson said, that's the race's edge.
Last one, Johnson leading from Moffat and Shield, although Shield, of course, has pulled out of the race, and Moffat in 3rd position, but in 4th position now is Phil Alexander. In Class 2, we see Gates and Seaton in the Capri leading from Thomas in the Mazda, Wheeler 3rd, and also Burbridge in the Mazda. So Mazda 2nd, 3rd and 4th in Class 2. In Class 3, we see Bailey and Land in the Salika now leading, of course, Peter Williamson out of the race. Holden in 2nd place now, and Graham Mine in 3rd place. In Class 4, we see Terry Finnegan leading. In 2nd place is Clark, and 3rd place Bradkey in the Lancer.
Get out of the way.
16 seconds in the lead. Dick Johnson's now taking his pit stop. He's taken 2 churns of fuel. He's putting on 4 tyres. They're slicks. Peter Brock, meantime, has gone back into the lead. Look at the steam coming off that tyre. It's been working very hard indeed. As soon as it comes off the car, it goes onto the wet road, and look what happens to it. That's the sort of temperature that these tyres are generating. They get up to about 80 degrees centigrade. Johnson's been in the pits now 35 seconds. That's a long stop. Hands raised. That means that the rear of the car's right. They're still trying to get the front left-hand tyre on. That's the critical one. That's the one that takes most of the wear here at Surfers Paradise International Raceway. Notice that Johnson uses a normal garage jack. He's gone in 52 seconds. Not a good pit stop. He's now going to have to wait there. And he's gone 52 seconds. That's almost a lap behind Peter Brock, but Peter Brock's pit stop is yet to come. These 2 drivers, the only ones now on the same lap, and they're racing for the lead. Johnson filling out the new tyres in these conditions. The track's starting to dry all over now. A wider line on which to race. And now the pressure is right on Peter Brock's pit crew. They know that the time they've got to beat is 52 seconds. Every second that they can make up in the pits will put Peter Brock closer to Dick Johnson and closer to race victory. Brock's crew have practiced changing 4 tyres in 28 seconds. But I doubt very much whether they can do it in these sort of circumstances. Concern now in the team, wandering around. John Harvey in the racing overalls there, certainly looking a bit of a worried man, wondering when Peter's going to take his pit stop. He's been more than 60 laps now, more than half distance. That's because the fuel consumption of the car is less in these conditions. He's not using the throttle as much as he would in a truly dry track, so he's able to stretch his pit stop a little while longer. There's Dick Johnson in 2nd position now. Peter Brock, some 40 seconds in the lead. That 40 seconds is all he can afford to lose in the pits. Peter Brock in the lead for the 2nd time in this race. He knows that Johnson's had his pit stop. He knows that Johnson's on fresh tyres. They'll take some bedding in. That means that now if Brock can make up time by really forcing his Holden Commodore hard in these few laps before his pit stop, he can make up valuable seconds on the road before he has to take his stop and then rely on his pit crew to make up valuable seconds in the pits. Brock disappointed that he's dropped back into 2nd position, now back into the lead, and he is flying. Taking every opportunity to pass slower motor cars, drifting it right out wide there, not taking his pit stop this time through. But we know that if Dick Johnson has taken his stop, that Peter Brock must be only a short distance away. He holds up his hand high that time as he passes his pit. Could be the next time round. Crew members, in fact, getting ready near the front tyres. Dick Johnson's pit stop so slow, in fact, that if Brock looks across the circuit, he can just about see Dick Johnson in front of him, almost a lap down. There's Brock. Look at the way he turns into that corner on the back straight. He just flips the car, and a beautiful controlled driver is Peter Brock. Probably not a better driver in Australia, frankly. She slips under the chicken car. That's how hard he's going when he's just working his way through the traffic with that sort of pace and finesse. Look at the way his hands are working on the wheel, keeping attitude off the motor car, keeping the car as flat as he possibly can on the track. Taking all the pressure himself. You've got to be fit to drive a car like that. Will his pit stop be this time round? Drifts wide. He could duck across the track, but no, he takes the option to go one more lap. Hand up again. I think his pit crew are wondering as much as we are what that hand means, because sooner or later he's got to come in. Still standing by the front tyre. When will he come in? Bruce Nowacki, the blonde-headed man there on the left of screen, doing additions on his hand now, trying to work out with a pen, trying to work out how long Peter Brock's got to go on his consumption. It's something that must be concerning Brock as well, because he's almost on an economy run at this particular stage. Flames belch out the side of Brock's car as unburnt fuel burns itself off on the exhaust pipe. Oversteer from the car. That left-hand front tyre must be feeling the pace at this time, not giving him the control it must have done earlier in the event. Brock's lead is 57 seconds. So he's extended his lead from the pit stop that Dick Johnson took, and Peter Brock is forging to the lead. Every second that he can make on the track is worth it in the pits. That means that he is just that far further ahead of Dick Johnson. Lap 70, 26 laps to go, and Peter Brock comes to the pits. He's coming very slowly down pit lane. He's true, ready to go, but Brock almost at a snail's pace as he comes into the pits. Watches on him. He's been...
In for the fuel stop that will decide the race. The tank is being filled at the moment. He's taking a change of tyres. Car up on the floor, Jackson at the moment. First tank of fuel's gone in. Off come the two tyres. Brock is taking fuel. Johnson was in for just over the 15 seconds. Johnson has just passed Brock. Johnson has gone past. Brock has his hands up. There's some problem. The problem starting the car. They're going to have to push it. They're going to have to push it. Brock has started. Johnson has got past him, so now Brock will have to chase Johnson. And we've had just over 51 seconds of pit stop for Brock. 51 seconds for Peter Brock, and now he's after Johnson.
And Peter Brock, almost exactly the same time of pit stop that Dick Johnson took. Very disappointing for Peter Brock, because now Dick Johnson has virtually taken it all back on the road. And the status quo is about the same as it was before the two pit stops occurred. There's Johnson, car 17. Moving into the S's, underneath Qantas Hill. With Brock still to enter the S's, so in fact Johnson will have opened an even greater lead on Peter Brock than he had before the two pit stops took place, which puts Dick Johnson into a very good position in this event with only 20 laps remaining. Johnson's gone through. We wait now for Peter Brock to come down the straight to give us an idea of the distance between the two drivers. And as you can see, there goes Alan Grice through our screen now, and Peter Brock is a long way behind. There he is now coming through. So Peter Brock at more than 20 seconds behind easily. And we're looking at about 24 seconds for Peter Brock That's the distance behind. So after the 2 pit stops are over, there was about 11 seconds between the drivers before the pit stops, and now it's opened out to 24 seconds. That means that Peter Brock would have to catch Dick Johnson by more than a second a lap to be on his tail at the finish. Dick Johnson will be told by his pit crew next time through that he's got a 24-second advantage. He virtually has to match Peter Brock's times now to hold the race differential and win by 24 seconds to take his second victory in the Australian Endurance Championship this year. Leading the 3-litre class, the veteran race driver Barry Seaton in a Mark II Ford Capri V6. Seaton has quite a distance indeed, probably more than a lap from Brian Wheeler in a Mazda RX-3, and Seaton doing it easily as he always has done. Winner of the James Hardy 1000 back in the days when it was the Gallagher 500. This will be one of Seaton's last drives in a Ford Capri. He's bought a BMW 635, just the same as Alan Grice's car, purchased it in race-going condition from England, and he'll be racing that in Australian touring car events next year. And we'll look forward to seeing the wily veteran Seaton in a car like that, sharing the drive this today with John Gates. The man who's purchased this motor car, an ex-Seaton car. And it's good to see Barry Seaton quitting the V6 Capri class in a winning condition such as this.
And Gates Seaton still leading in Class 2 from Brian Wheeler in the Mazda RX-3. In 3rd place is Bob Thomas, and then in 4th place, Burbridge in the Mazda.
One lap down on the leaders. Alan Moffat there with the brake lights flashing on the Mazda RX-7 finds himself in exactly the same position in which he's been in the last 2 long-distance races he's contested. In the Hang 10 400 at Sandown in Melbourne, this car's debut, Moffat finished in excellent 6th position while still feeling out the motor car. In the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst in early October, Moffat finished 3rd after the race was prematurely shortened by a massive prang at the top of the hill. Moffat, it is said, could well have done much better than that 3rd position had the race run its full distance. Well, here we are over 300 kilometres, and Alan Moffat is hoping that something will happen to the 2 lead cars 1 lap ahead of him. He's had to take an unscheduled pit stop. He was hoping to get through this race without a tyre change and without a fuel stop. He did take a stop. It probably cost him about 40 seconds in the pits, plus the time getting in and out of the pits, and that, of course, has dropped him the 1 lap down. But even if he were on the same lap, it's doubtful that Moffat would be able to challenge Johnson and Brock, who are flying in their Falcon and Commodore respectively. Certainly Moffat, while he was fast in practice, a 1:16.6, 0.4 of a second under the lap record, was still a second off the pace that Johnson and Brock could establish. And it proves the point, I think, that longevity and reliability is what's going to win Alan Moffat races in this Mazda RX-7 next year, because a big small car, or a good small car, is still no match for a good big car. And that's a race adage that I think Alan Moffat at this stage is contemplating as he drives around 1 lap down. But nonetheless, an excellent effort from Alan Moffat, who takes this car next week to Macau for the Gear 200, the support race to the Macau Grand Prix, a race that Alan Moffat won in 1974 in a Ford Capri. So the first international challenge for the Mazda RX-7 will be in Southeast Asia in just 2 weeks' time.
This is a sensation in the pits. Dick Johnson, the race leader, into the pits. There are 81 laps gone in the 75-lap race, 81 laps gone in the 95-lap race. That's 14 laps to go. Johnson has pitted, and they are changing the tyres. Peter Brock was catching Johnson at the rate of 2 seconds a lap. Johnson going down 2 seconds a lap to Peter Brock. So Brock is now Johnson is out with 14 laps to go, and Peter Brock, the new race leader.
26 seconds that pit stop for Dick Johnson, but we get news up here that Peter Brock has a drama. We saw him push start in the pits, and we understand that the stewards are contemplating putting a minute penalty on Peter Brock, which will put him behind again, even though he's in the lead on the road. Peter Brock facing the minute penalty. I would think at this stage that John Harvey and the rest of the Holden dealer team would be starting to negotiate that with the race stewards. But Peter Brock in the lead on the road at this particular stage after Dick Johnson took that unscheduled stop for a left rear tyre. And I think Peter Brock will worry about the politics and the push starting later, because at the moment all he wants to do is stay ahead of Dick Johnson. There's Johnson. Half a lap behind. Johnson can't get through there. He's being booked badly, and Johnson getting very desperate to get through. And that's what happens when you get in the way of the man who wants to lead the race. That's John White in the Gemini, who got in the way of Dick Johnson and paid the penalty. Meantime, as Dick Johnson comes onto the straight, John Harvey walks up the pit straight, heading towards the officials' booth under the control tower. So John Harvey to discover just what that 1 minute penalty is all about.
Well, with me at the moment, Roy McDonald, the pit manager with Dick Johnson. And Roy, can you tell us what went wrong with the tyres?
Well, we have picked up a stone around the track that's gone right through the tyre. We've got a puncher that was slightly deflating. There's 15 laps to go and it wouldn't have made it to the end, so we had to come in and then change it.
Yes, Brock was catching Dick Johnson at a rate of about 2 seconds a lap. So
I think it was around about 1 second a lap.
Was it?
Yes.
So really that's virtually cost you the race, hasn't it?
I'll say it has, yeah.
18 seconds in front now. You don't think you can bring that back?
No, I doubt that very much. We'll have to settle for second place.
Oh, well, bad luck as always next year.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
Well, it may not have to wait until next year, because that 1 minute penalty is still to be resolved. So Dick Johnson soaring on, and he should be told that that 1 minute penalty could be applied, because it could alter the way in which he will drive this race. At the moment, he might be settling back, accepting second place. On the other hand, he might be trying desperately to catch Peter Brock. And from the look of those flashing lights, there's only one thing Dick Johnson wants to do at this stage, and that's go for broke. Peter Brock in the lead, letting John Harvey worry about the 1 minute penalty in the pits. He'll be told how far behind Dick Johnson is, and he'll be told whether Dick Johnson is catching or not. That's all that should worry the race driver at a time like this. The leader in the 1600cc class is the little Toyota Corolla Levin, being driven by the only lady in the event, Alexandra Surplus. She's sharing the drive with Doug Clark, who used to be Graham Bailey's co-driver in the Toyota Celica. This is a classic case of Peter Williamson and the Toyota dealer team loading the bases, because the car that was most likely to be in contention for the Australian Endurance Championship was the Craig Bradkey Mitsubishi Lancer, which was only 3 points behind Williamson in the overall placings for the Australian Endurance Championship. Now, to stop Bradkey winning his class, the 1600cc class, and therefore scoring maximum points and worrying the Toyota Celicas, this Toyota Corolla was brought up here to Surfers Paradise, and it's doing its job admirably, because it is leading the class at this particular stage, thus blocking the Mitsubishi Lancer from the Australian Endurance Championships. Alexandra Surplus, a 25-year-old Sydney driver, doing an excellent job in the car. Doug Clark, a 38-year-old thereabouts, driver from Gosford in New South Wales, a seasoned professional, and if it's him in the car at the moment, it's a credit to him, because the car is going excellently on the road. And the confirmation comes out to Peter Brock. Yes, he does have a 1 minute penalty. He is 42 seconds ahead of Dick Johnson. There are 10 laps remaining in this event. To overcome his 1 minute penalty, Peter Brock has to open up 18 seconds on Dick Johnson in just 10 laps. He opened up 2 seconds on the last lap, so it is possible. Dick Johnson, however, may not have been told about the 1 minute penalty. He may be simply cruising to accept a certain second place. If Johnson gets the word, he should be able to hold Brock out, but it'll be close.
this race is far from over yet, because we've just learned from the Holden Dealer team pit crew that Peter Brock, in fact, will be penalised 1 minute for a push start in the pits. Now, it's something that I am not exactly sure on. John Harvey, what are the details?
Well, the rule book says that the starter motor must be used to start the car at all times, but in the last few years in all long-distance races, they waive that rule during pit stops. As long as the car starts at the beginning of the race, either on the warm-up lap or just prior to the start of the race, no problem. However, they don't apply that here, and they've now imposed a penalty on us. But however, we're 70.5 seconds ahead, so in fact we're 10.5 seconds ahead of Dick with the penalty.
It's going to make it a very close finish. Are you going to challenge that ruling at all? Are you going to challenge that ruling at all, or are you going to let it stay?
Well, it'll depend how it finishes up. If we win the race by 65 seconds, I think we'd worry about it. If we lose the race by a second, I think we'd have something to say, sure.
There's Dick Johnson. Now, what sort of message has he got from his pit crew? Has he been told about the situation that's occurred for Peter Brock? One must assume that he has. We've got a clock on him at the moment to see just what the distance is behind. Johnson would want to win in front of his home crowd anyway, so I doubt very much if he'll be backing off too much. Flings the car onto the main straight, plants the foot, takes fourth gear about there, working up to about 210 kilometres an hour. And the split is 41 seconds, so Peter Brock certainly isn't opening the gap that he should be. But look at the smoke coming off the left-hand rear tyre of Dick Johnson. Now there's the story. He's got smoke coming off that rear tyre every time he flings any sort of weight onto that tyre. There he goes. Oh, Dick Johnson gone. That car started to lock up as it came under the Dunlop Bridge. You could see something going wrong with the left-hand rear tyre as the officials race down to Dick Johnson now. And you could see it there as he went under the braking area, into the braking area, into Rothman's corner. Something locked up at the rear end. It's been the real problem of this motor car for quite some time now, that it's been unable to accept hard braking. The rear suspension hasn't been unable to take it. In fact, Johnson has gone for quite some help from sources such as even the Nissan motor team. And there he is. Dick Johnson's out of the car. He's okay, but a very disappointed Dick Johnson. And it just starts to give way there. You can see the rear wheel locking up entirely, and there's nothing Dick can do to hold it. It hits the grass, and as soon as it hits the grass, it's freewheeling, and there's nothing that Dick can do to control it down there. Into the gully. And the power that roll bar must have inside Dick's car, because it just crushed down on the cockpit. And I would say that Dick Johnson owes, if not his life, certainly his well-being at this stage, to the strength of the roll bar inside that Ford Falcon. And so much for the 1 minute penalty. Peter Brock, Peter Perfect, back in the lead again and in a winning position. One lap up on Alan Moffat now. Can afford to cruise to the finish, which is only a very few laps away. As darkness starts to descend on the circuit, rain earlier in the day has forced the Surfers International Resort 300 to start very late. And without daylight saving in Queensland, of course, we're heading towards dusk already as Peter Brock enters the final 5 or 6 laps of this 95-lap endurance race. Brock, his arm resting casually now on the sill of the car as he comes down the main straight. Doesn't mean he's taking it that easily. It means simply that the effort that Peter Brock has had to put up today in something of a brilliant drive to make this Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore go as quickly as it has, to match pace with Dick Johnson throughout the race, has been quite immense. See Brock's arm go on the sill there again. He's resting his muscles because he must be very tired indeed. A satisfying week for Peter Brock, in fact. We're on lap 95 to go, and a satisfying week indeed for Peter Brock, because earlier this week at Exmouth in South Australia, he won a fishing contest. Peter Brock is a mad keen fisherman, an amateur fisherman. He caught a trevally, 39.8 kilograms it was. He took it back to the weighing bridge, and discovered that the world record for a trevally caught on a 10-kilogram line was 37.53. So at the moment, we're watching a world champion racing at Surfers Paradise International Raceway, a world fishing champion. And I think Peter Brock's probably prouder than that, than he is even of winning this event today. Brock, 3 times Australian touring car champion, 5 times winner of the James Hardy 1000, matching the all-time James Hardy 1000 record set by Bob Jane. And it's a satisfying conclusion to the long-distance endurance race season for Peter Brock, with the Australian Grand Prix at Calder Raceway in Victoria to come next week, where he and Dick Johnson were due to clash again, but it will now depend on whether Johnson's car can be readied in time. So this could well be the last clash this year of Johnson and Brock. And it's been a year that Brock hasn't enjoyed because Johnson's had his measure all the way. Johnson's car has had a better power-to-weight ratio. Brock has been denied the cylinder heads and camshafts that he wanted to make himself competitive. He said that had he been allowed those cylinder heads and camshafts, that he would have had an extra 35 horsepower approximately, and another 11 foot-pounds of torque. His engine currently running at 330 horsepower, and on every straight, on every acceleration out of a corner, he's been behind the 8-ball, separated from Dick Johnson by mass horsepower. It's been a frustrating situation for Peter Brock. And earlier, before this race started, we asked him just what he thought of the rivalry between himself and Dick Johnson.
Dick's a very clever engineer, very good driver, and we have to keep on our toes to try and keep in the ballpark. I think it's been very good for motorsport in general. It's certainly been good for me and the team, and that we've had to really extract an extra amount of performance from our car and from ourselves. And I mean, everywhere around Australia this year has been fantastic for motorsport. It's been great racing. The fans have been behaving well at football crowds, and I'm looking forward to 82. I hope I can turn the tables.
Well, a smile from Peter Brock. There was probably a plastic smile at the time he gave that interview, but now he's got reason to think that it may come good for him in 1982. He'll keep trying to get those camshafts and the cylinder head homologated so that he can be more competitive with Dick Johnson. And certainly this year, we've seen probably Peter Brock at his best. Not necessarily winning, but because of the desperation that's been on him, we've seen a more intense Peter Brock. We've seen a man who has tried harder than he possibly ever could before. And we're coming up to the checkered flag now for Peter Brock, winner of the Surfers Paradise International Resort 300 over 95 laps of the 3.22-kilometre Surfers Paradise circuit. Graham Bailey in the Toyota Celica will take the 2-litre class. That will give Toyota the Australian Endurance Championship for 1980.